Hello and welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. In today's video, we are going to unbox, reveal, discuss, and upgrade the contents of the Flayarrrs pre-constructed EDH deck from Commander Legends Dungeons & Dragons Battle for Baldur's Gate. Thank you for choosing MTG Burgeoning for your Magic the Gathering content. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video and consider becoming a subscriber. Doing so supports the channel and makes you eligible for our various subscriber rewards series. If you would like to support the channel further, then click the link to our Patreon page in the description below. There you can join our ongoing Pack Wars series as a 1-month supporter or ongoing member. Or try joining Pack Wars for free by commenting on every MTG Burgeoning video in a month. We strive to offer creative rewards through our various Patreon tiers. So if Pack Wars isn't for you, then something else will be. Links to our content and various subscriber rewards series can be found in the description below. Send us an email, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. We are your channel for all things magic. What's up, MTG BC? That is the MTG Burgeoning community. Welcome back to another installment of our ongoing cracking open pre-constructed commander decks and talking about them and upgrading them because it's just so much fun to do. Today we have Flayarrrs. Hope I'm saying that correctly with all of the appropriate number of R's. All right, so let's get started because once we pull that seal, once we liberate the contents of this packaging, there's no going back, and we are now through the looking glass, people. So here we go, another commander deck, and we are ready to rock and roll, baby. All right, empty packaging to the recycling bin that goes. And of course, we have our, our little tokens that we can push out. And that sweet, where did it go? There it is. That wonderful, sweet card divider. Oh yeah, because you have to divide up your cards. You just have to do it. All right, and like we've seen so many previous times, this deck box is going to come. All right, it's still intact. It doesn't look very nice, of course, but it's not like it's falling apart yet. So this box, although not sturdy, it's not falling apart. Packaging we get rid of, and let's dump the contents. I said dump all the contents. There we go. Put our box right there. We have our life wheel. These are so nice to stock up in case anyone forgets their dice. We have our This Is How You Play Magic, our sweet 100 cards, and we have our Collector Booster Sample Pack. Those are the contents of Flayarrrs. With the packaging now out of the way, we can get to the sweet innards of the cellophane wrapper. So we are most definitely carrying forth with this video with the understanding that Captain Nagathrad is going to be the front-facing commander of this build, of any refined build, of any updated build, and any upgraded build of this type, because this is one of the most exciting commanders from any pre-constructed deck that we've had in many moons. Here we have a 3/6 legendary horror pirate for 3 in Dimir colors. Horrors we control have menace. So nice to see the horror tribe getting some kind of love, and Captain Nagathrad not only brings the love, but I'm going to be honest with you folks, he's bringing a little bit of lust too. He certainly is. Whenever a horror we control deals combat damage to a player, that player mills that many cards. So if a horror slips in for 6 damage, that opponent is going to mill 6 cards. At the beginning of our end step, we choose target artifact or creature card on an opponent's graveyard that was put there from their library this turn. We put that onto the battlefield under our control. Notice the text on Captain here. It says whenever an opponent, sorry, let's start again. Choose target library from an opponent's graveyard that was put there from their library this turn. It does not necessarily have to be milled by any of our attacking horrors. We could have just milled the opponent with a different spell or effect and then had Captain Nagothrad on the battlefield to reap the recursive goodness of a creature or artifact. So keep that in mind as we move forward with this video. But first and foremost, this is our guy. We are going all in with Captain Nagothrad, and there's nothing else to discuss when it comes to the commander selection. That is the primary front-facing commander, but we should also talk about what the secondary options are. So here we have Zelix Sanity Flayer. This is going to be our blue legendary creature, and then we will have to choose a background in order to get our Dimir color pairing, which will be our legendary background mythic that we'll see right after this card. So Zelix is a 2/3 horror for 2 and a blue mana, and whenever a player mills 1 or more creature cards, we create a 1/1 black horror creature token. We can pay 1, tap this, and target player mills 3 cards. So not only are we getting rewarded for whenever a player is being milled by creating 1/1 black horror creature tokens, Zelix has its own built-in mill ability by paying 1 and tapping it. And of course, it's a horror to stay on theme. So although through my eyes, Zelix would not make it as the primary commander of a type of build like this, it absolutely has a place in the 99. Paired with Zelix as the background, if you so choose to do so, it is Haunted One. 2 and a black, our legendary enchantment background. It is a mythic. Commander creatures we own have, whenever this creature becomes tapped, it and other creatures we control that share a creature type with it each get +2/+0 and gain Undying until end of turn. And for anyone who's unfamiliar or just can't remember what Undying is, it means that whenever a creature with Undying dies, if it had no +1/+1 counters on it, we return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it. So although this does have a great deal of synergy with any type of tribe that's going to be played in black, think Edgar Markov and vampires, think any one of the 5-color legendary slivers with slivers, this is going to be a background that could see an awful lot of play the further and further we get removed from its release and opening time during the time that Baldur's Gate came out. So although I don't believe that Zelix and Haunted One is the most powerful option of the commanders included here, just because Captain Nagothrad is just way, way too good, I do believe that Haunted One is going to probably be the best mythic background from these pre-constructed decks, just because of what it can do and how many different tribes it can service. In addition to the brand new front-facing commander of Captain Nagothrad and the brand new pair of Zelix and Haunted One, there are 7 other cards that are brand new to Magic's catalog present in the Flayarrrs pre-constructed deck, and we're going to talk about each one of them right now. This is Aboleth's Spawn, and we should not overlook what this creature can do, not just in this deck, but pretty much any deck that's playing blue. We have a 2/3 fish horror with flash and ward 2 for 2 and a blue mana. Whenever a creature is entering the battlefield under an opponent's control and it causes a triggered ability of that creature to trigger, we may copy that ability and we may choose new targets for the copy. A Wood Elves comes into play, we flash in Aboleth's Spawn, and guess what? We now get to reap the benefits of searching our library for a forest card. Hopefully we have those in there. A better option may be Farhaven Elf for basic lands, but just think about all of the potential ETB triggers from all of the creatures that run rampant in the commander format. Craterhoof Behemoth, yes please. All right, next up we have Endless Evil. Here we have an aura for 2 and a blue. We put this aura on a creature we control, and at the beginning of our upkeep, we create a token that's a copy of enchanted creature, except the token is only 1/1. And when the enchanted creature dies, if that creature was a horror, we get to return endless evil to its owner's hand. So as long as we can keep this aura slapped onto a horror, we get the Rancor-like effect of it coming back to our hand when that horror dies. And as an additional bonus, the tokens that are being created, if that aura is attached to a horror, then those are going to be horrors as well. And if we can somehow squeeze Umbrous Fear Manifest into this deck as part of the 99, as those horrors ETB, they force cards to be milled, which Captain Nagathriad is all about in this deck. Next, we have Grell Philosopher. It's a 1/4 zombie, 1/4 horror wizard, no zombie here, for 2 and a blue. When it ETBs and at the beginning of our upkeep, each horror we control gains all activated abilities of target artifact an opponent controls until end of turn. And we may spend blue mana as though it were mana of any color to activate those abilities. First and foremost, Soul Ring, anybody? Next, we have Psionic Ritual, 4 and 2 blue for a sorcery. It has Replicate, which we can copy this spell if we tap an untapped horror we control. And we may copy this for each time we pay the Replicate cost. Keep in mind, we can do this more than once. So if we have 3 untapped horrors, we can tap 3 of them and copy the spell 3 times. We get to exile target instant or sorcery card from our graveyard and copy it. We may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. Then we exile Psionic Ritual because this card is uber powerful. As long as we've got the mana available and enough horrors to tap, we can cast those spells without paying their mana cost. Imagine what we can do with that type of card in a mill deck, keeping in mind that Psionic Ritual does not target just our graveyard. It technically doesn't target any graveyard. It targets an instant or sorcery from a graveyard. So it's any one of our opponents or it's one of ours. Psionic Ritual is going to be one of those sneaky cards that as time moves on, it's going to climb a little bit in value until this is going to be one of those cards that people are going to be asking for a reprint. Next up, we have Brainstealer Dragon, a 6/6 dragon horror for 5 and 2 black with flying. At the beginning of our end step, we exile the top card of each opponent's library. We may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and if we cast a spell this way, we may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it. And whenever a non-land permanent an opponent owns enters the battlefield under our control, they lose life equal to its mana value. So in a deck that's all about milling, this is a card that's going to exile the top card of our opponent's library. So I don't know exactly, particularly for a mana investment of 7 mana, in a Dimir build that, let's be honest, is not generally in the color combination of, historical ramp abilities. I'm not sure this Dragon Horror really wants to do what we're trying to accomplish here. But I will say there is some synergy with its second ability with Captain Nagathriad, that as long as a non-land permanent an opponent controls enters the battlefield under our control, they'll lose life equal to its mana value. And that's what Captain Nagathriad's recursive effect is all about. So even though we have to invest the 7 to get this bad boy onto the battlefield, I think we can consider the exiling of the top card of each opponent's library as just a peripheral bonus to the synergy between Brainstealer Dragon and our general. All right, next we have From the Catacombs, another sorcery. This is 3 and 2 black. We can put target creature card from a graveyard, any graveyard of course, not just ours, onto the battlefield under our control with a corpse counter on it. We then take the initiative. If that creature would leave the battlefield, we exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. And when we take the initiative, Whenever one or more creatures a player controls deal combat damage to us, that player gets to take the initiative, which is pretty much similar to what they do with the Monarch. Whenever we take the initiative, and at the beginning of our upkeep, we get to venture into the Undercity, and this would be the Undercity. We begin with Secret Entrance, and then we have to traverse all the way to Throne of the Dead 3. So there is a small initiative package woven into Flayarrrs that may be best served in a dedicated dungeon deck. I don't know that we're going to get the same type of utility in a deck that we want to optimize and refine based upon the milling ability and what Captain Nagathriad can do for our horrors. But that's going to be left up to the crafter and you. Lastly, secondary to From the Catacombs, it also has the escape mechanic. So we can cast this spell again for 3 and 2 black and exile 5 other cards from our graveyard. Again, that's putting target creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield under our control with a corpse counter. And lastly, card number 10 of the Flayarrrs new cards for the Magic catalog. It is Ushalan. It is star 4 for 3 and a black. It is a Crab Ooze Horror. That's right, MTG BC. It is a Crab Ooze Horror. Ushalan's power is equal to the number of crabs, oozes, and or horrors we control. So I don't believe we're going to have many, if any, other crabs or oozes in the 99 of this build, but we should have many, many other horrors. And at the beginning of our end step, we may exile up to 1 target creature card from an opponent's graveyard, and if we do, we create a token that's a copy of Ushalan. And let's face it, in a dedicated mill deck like this is shaping up to be, that should get out of hand very, very quickly. Okay, so for Flayarrrs, we reviewed the 10 new cards in the deck. Now let's talk about the reprints. We're going to start off with one of the classic reprints that you can never have enough of, our Arcane Signet that will go right over here into our yay pile. Mindstone is another great reprint. You cannot have too many Mindstones in your catalog of cards. Factor Fiction, Diuthi Horror, that is a Tempest original, of course. Dusk Mangler, Feed the Swarm. How about that? Black enchantment removal. Phyrexian Rager, Plague Spitter, Ravenous Chupacabra, Siphon Mind, Drowned in the Lock. That's an absolutely perfect card for this type of build. Extract from Darkness, Dimir Keyrune, Dimir Signet, Everflowing Chalice, Herald's Horn. Yes for horrors, please. Lightning Greaves, because, well, let me just put that one over here. And yes, Lightning Greaves again, because you can have no limited number of Lightning Greaves. So here we have Mindcrank. Now, listen here, MTGBC. Since we are already dabbling in a mill deck, and of course we have black in this mill deck because, well, it's mill. If we're going to keep Mindcrank in this deck, it may be in your best interest to also include Bloodchief Ascension, because with Bloodchief Ascension online and Mindcrank on our side of the battlefield, well, that's pretty much just game over outside of any automatic shuffle your graveyard into your library effects. Actually, we're going to put that one right there, as that is a nice reprint to see. Mindcrank is in. There's our Soul Ring. Can't get enough of those. There's another great reprint, Talisman of Dominance. I'm telling you, that is not one that gets reprinted very often. Thought Vessel is another great reprint, even though it was just in Commander Legends. You can't have too many Thought Vessels. All right, Chasm Skulker, Forgotten Creation, Fractured Sanity. Wow, that was fast. That was from MH2, wasn't it? Wasn't that from MH2? Oh, my goodness. All right, we got Grazilax, Season there, the Hullbreaker Horror. Wow, that's a nice reprint. Geez, they didn't take too long to throw that bad boy into a Commander deck, did they? Leyline of Anticipation is in here. Wow. There is a massively awesome reprint. All spells you cast have flash. Mind Flayer, of course, because in a deck called Flayarrrs, we have to have the original. Overcharged Amalgam, Pull from Tomorrow, Reflections of Litjara, Sludge Monster, Wharf Infiltrator, I think that's from Eldritch Moon, Black Markets, you can't have enough Black Markets, particularly if we are playing a black deck. No pun intended, folks, creatures are going to die. Crippling Fear, Curtain's Call, Dark Hatchling, Dross Harvester, Guilt Feeder. That card is ridiculous in a mill deck. Wow, we can actually consider that a win condition. Hex's Strong, Hunted Horror. Wow, that needed a reprint. That was starting to get up there in price. That is a card that's wonderfully paired with Torpor Orb. In Garrick's Wake, you can't have enough of those because that's better than Plague Wind because it takes out Planeswalkers as well. Night Howler, Nihilith, Sewer Nemesis, Woe Strider, Consuming Aberration. Whoa, Memory Plunder is in here from Shadowmoor? Wow, I think that might be the very first time that card has been reprinted. Any combination of 4 Dimir hybrid mana, and you get to cast a sorcery or instant card from an opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost. Yes, please. Phyrexian Revoker, Psychosis Crawler, and wow, Spellskite too? Never thought I would see the day that Spellskite would make it into a pre-constructed deck, particularly during the days of the Modern Masters series. This being a 2-color deck, the mana base is not one that needs a great deal of mana fixing. We need to have our blue mana, of course, and we need to have our black mana. Add that to the recipe with a few important utility lands, and we should have a very serviceable land base. What we see here with the Battle for Baldur's Gates land bases is that they are definitely a step back from the Streets of New Capenna. Now, I do understand that the Streets of New Capenna commander decks were the annual commander decks, and Wizards goes a little bit further in trying to spice those decks up. As it is, this is also a land base that could use some refinement. So let's go through and talk about what can stay and what should go. All right, so of course we've got our Temple of the False God. We have our Rogue's Passage. These are pretty much standard in a lot of the commander decks that we see. Here we have Nephalia Drownyard. We get to have a mill effect on one of our lands, which is pretty sweet. Drownyard Temple has a nice ability that if for some reason we get this card milled into our own graveyard, we can pay 3 and get it back onto the battlefield tapped, but we can do that at any time. Myriad Landscape will help us to get a couple of additional lands onto the battlefield. Ash Barrens helps us to smooth out our mana. The best land in the format, of course, is our Command Tower. That's always going to be a welcome sight to see, so we'll put that one right there. Same thing with Exotic Orchard. That appears to have now become a pre-constructed commander deck staple. There were many, many moons where that was not the case. Path of Ancestry. If we are going to pull out all the stops and make this a dedicated hoarder deck, then Path of Ancestry would be a fantastic land to keep in the deck. If for some reason the crafter of the 99 wants to go in a different direction, then this might be one of the lands to take out just for the purposes of maintaining tempo. Choked Estuary will come into play untapped, but we have to reveal an island or swamp card, and honestly, this is one that could be replaced by something like Drowned Catacomb or Shipwreck Marsh or maybe even Watery Grave if the finances or availability allow it to happen. Same can be said with Creeping Tar Pit. It ETB's tapped, it can become an elemental, it is unblockable, but, I mean, how does it help our horror theme? How does it help our mill theme? It doesn't. Darkwater Catacombs, okay, that's a decent one. Dimir Aqueduct. I don't know how you feel about the Rue lands, but for me, I mean, if you can guarantee that you're going to get your drops every single time, then I guess falling back a little bit by putting this into play tapped and returning 1 to your hand, I don't know. That's up to the brewer. If it were my 99, I would take this out for one of the aforementioned examples. Tainted Isle is fantastic in this deck. The whole Tainted series, particularly if we're talking about just a 2-color deck with black in it, extraordinarily underrated. Temple of Deceit, I would take this out in a heartbeat at ETB's tapped, and we only benefit from that with scrying 1. Sunken Hollow is fantastic. That will definitely stay. Same thing with River of Tears. I know it could be a little wonky. You just have to make sure you pay attention to what lands you're putting into play if you need the black more than you need the blue. Port of Carful is another one that ETBs. I mean, it does have a rather pricey built-in mill to recursion effect. We have to pay 3, a blue, and 2 black, and tap this land. So we have to have 6 mana sources, and we have to utilize this land. And when we do, we mill 4 cards, and then we return a creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. It is beneficial because it doesn't say do only as a sorcery. So I suppose if for some reason we have this and 6 mana up at the end of our last opponent's turn, then yeah, maybe sacrificing Port of Carful could be helpful. Is there a creature card in our graveyard worth doing all of that hoop jumping? That is up to you. And then we come to our basic islands, and then we get to our swamps. So that is the land base. It seems decent. There's definitely space and room for improvement. And lastly, here are the rest of the contents of the Mind Flayarrrs pre-constructed deck. We have our ultra-thick, never ever going to curl foil version of Captain Nagathred. Man, that etched foiling looks pretty sweet. Pretty sweet. Ooh, you hear how it made the thud? Clunk. And then we have a bunch of squid tokens here. There's all those squid tokens. That's for Chasm Skulker. Here's a horror token, horror token, horror token. So many horrors. We already talked about taking the initiative and going into the Undercity. Here's a garbage card that we will recycle. On the back side, we have an Eldrazi horror tokens. We got lots of those. We have our 3/3 Centaur tokens that are made by Hunted Horror. Oh, there's supposed to be 2 of them or 3 of them. I thought it was 3, 2, 6. Not sure. I guess it's only 2. A copy, a copy, a copy, and a copy. There you have it, MTGBC. The entire contents of Mind Flayarrrs. Mind Flayarrrs is a mill-driven Dimir deck that wants to reward its pilot with peripheral graveyard recursion effects. Keeping this theme in mind, and with the front-facing commander, Captain Nagathred, as the general, the following cards are some possible upgrades to the original deck list, each of which enhances the mill theme of this build. In order to optimize the payoff of recurring an opponent's artifact or creature from their graveyard, milling each opponent simultaneously is preferred. Ruin Crab achieves this feat through a basic fundamental of playing Magic the Gathering, putting lands onto the battlefield. You play a land, each opponent mills 3 cards. Psychic Corrosion also enhances this mill theme through another basic fundamental of the game, drawing cards. Whenever you draw a card, each opponent mills 2 cards. Altar of the Brood mills each opponent 1 card whenever a permanent enters the battlefield under your control. As long as you can maintain the Monarch, Court of Culling mills each opponent 10 cards at the beginning of your upkeep. Folio of Fancies offers a repeatable milling effect in addition to global card draw, which could lead to a higher number of cards milled by your opponents. Let's kick the milling up a notch with Mind Grind, and have your opponents reveal cards from the top of their library until each of them reveals X lands. Then they put all of the revealed cards into their graveyards. Really swing for the milling fences and add Maddening Cacophony. If kicked, then each opponent will mill half of their library, rounded up. If you can't find a gem of an artifact or creature in an opponent's graveyard after that, then your opponents need better cards. Double all of your milling effects with Bruvak the Grandiloquent. When paired with the aforementioned Maddening Cacophony, Bruvak becomes a win condition as each opponent would mill their entire library. Absent a shuffle their graveyard into their library effect, you win the game, and possibly lose some friends. Speaking of win conditions, if there is black deck with a mill theme, then it is criminal not to include Sir Conrad the Grim. Sir Conrad has a built-in global mill effect and deals 1 point of damage to each opponent whenever a creature hits any graveyard from anywhere. Once again, the aforementioned maddening cacophony, in conjunction with Sir Conrad, should rid the table of your opponents and, once again, some friendships as well. The Mind Flayarrrs Precon deck rehashes the classic Dimir Mill archetype and adds an additional payoff in the form of reanimating an opponent's artifact or creature at the end of its pilot's turn. This theme is not unique, but the payoff from the front-facing commander, Captain Nagathred, helps to add a different wrinkle to the usual Mill strategy. With more than enough cards from Magic's history to augment and complement this theme, the 99 of this deck has the highest level of possible support from any of the pre-constructed decks from Battle for Baldur's Gate.